people saying like, "Oh, I put an offer in this week and it went bad." Like whoa, like that stuff to see that in real life. I'm like, dude, like this is. I think it's so cool, and it's something I probably never that's something I'll never get over.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? You are going to absolutely love this week's guest on the show. Kingsley has made a game-changing impact on his life and the lives of others from real estate investing, and is someone extremely inspiring to listen to and chat with. He went all in on real estate from the W-2 world in a really short time, and we talked about some valuable tips in this episode, including making sure you enjoy the process, the power of in-person meetups, a little about my 3-family story, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode.
Now, I guess even the question I have now is really about your first, I guess that first, the 3-family that you've acquired, stuff like that. Like, congrats again.
Thank you so much.
I gave you a standing ovation earlier through Zoom, right? But man, I just want everyone else to see and everyone watching that, as much as I'm able to influence others and inspire people in different ways, dude, I'm constantly inspired by people I see on the internet, but even people in real life, people who I know, and I feel great to have the honor to know you, man, and
you too, man. Like seriously, real stuff,
dude,
yeah,
and real, because being part of our group and even Candor and going to the book clubs and stuff like that, for a long time, especially during all the quarantine stuff and before this, I was just watching all stuff on the internet and reading books, but then to go into an area where there's people starting out, people who've done it already, people who've got processes, and see everyone be normal people and cool people, interesting, funny people. I was dude, this is real. And being able to have conversations about real estate, dude, I don't think I really had my first kind of conversations until this last year when I started hanging around the professionals for real. But before that, for the 2 years before that, I used to just watch and consume so much and just kind of just have it in my own head. But now to see people with actual plans and with actual goals, for real, and not just a kind of coffee shop conversation where people you tell someone, "Oh, I'm in real estate," and then they say, "Oh, I've always thought about real estate," or whatever.
Yeah.
People saying "Oh, I put an offer in this week and it went bad." Whoa, like that stuff to see that in real life. I'm like, dude, this is. I think it's so cool, and it's something I probably never I'll never get over. So, man, with your story, tell me, I'm sure you told people before how you found the deal and everything, but kind of tell me, how the story behind that deal and how you found it, and how's and how you feel about it overall.
Sure, man. Yeah. I totally agree with you. Starting to network and stuff like that. I'll jump into it in a sec, but
Yeah.
I just want to say something real quick. Starting to, have those conversations, like you said, with real life people that are, have done what you want to do, are doing much bigger things than you are, are just beginning. The power is unreal, man. And the thing that I talk about it often, because it's something that, I've kind of experienced, from time to time so far, is even one sentence from one conversation can totally change everything, man. It's unreal. I tell the story decently often, actually, but I'll keep it short and sweet. So basically, a while back I was talking to Nate Swift. Shout out to Nate. And he was another investor that was in over in Springfield a couple of years ago, and I was talking with him on Instagram one day, and we were just shooting the breeze. So, I was out to dinner with a couple of buddies, and we're just going back and forth. And I had just started at, the place that I'm at for my day job, or no, I think it was coming up on a year, I believe. And then I was telling him, I'm like, "Oh man, I got to wait a whole nother year until I get pre-approved. This is crazy. I'd love to, start to do things now." And he's like, "Bro, you're ready." I'm like, Nate, I'm like, I'm not following. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, you're ready. I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't get it. And what I was telling him was that I actually like right after high school, I, was working, in HVAC for a little bit and kind of
Mm,
needed a change and, started to get into entrepreneurship and stuff.
yeah.
And I ended up going to like community college for a year, which was,
Mhm.
technically full time.
Yeah.
Now, he told me, he's like, dude, like, you'll have to check with your lender on this, but I'm pretty sure that you can use that full time year that you were in community college, even though you
Yeah.
hated it, and you don't have
Yeah.
a degree,
Yeah.
plus that year that you just got at your day job, and like you should be able to get pre-approved. I'm
Ooh.
like, dude, stop it. And like literally, like, shortly after that, I ended up getting pre-approved and then like learned a little bit more. And
Yeah.
like that's all it took was like a short conversation on
That's it.
Instagram, man. You know?
It's real.
And
It's
like
real.
that shaved off like a whole year of time. Like like it's something as small and like but as big as that. And it's so powerful. Like the more conversations you have with real life people,
That's
like
right.
the more stuff like that happens. And like regardless of like, what side it's on, like you might be able to tell somebody something like that, like you don't think anything twice about. And like you
Mm.
might like totally blow their socks off and like, put them in a completely different place than they were in before. And like it's so powerful, man. Like the information that's out there and like, yeah, I mean, the more like people that you hang around with, like in the
Yeah.
space that you want to try to get into,
Absolutely.
like the amount of value and stuff that you pick up is unreal. It's a whole nother animal.
Couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. That's why you gotta try to surround yourself with as much of it as possible, and make sure the best way to do it is to make sure you're having fun while doing it. Whether it's the dinners, whether it's the meetups, however it is, like it just happens kind of effortlessly. But tell me about the three fam, man.
Sure, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guys, like Kingsley said, I did just close on a three family in Leominster, my first one. And it's been very interesting so far. I'll kind of tell the story a little bit and I'll keep it kind of short but
Yeah.
real at the same time because it's been interesting so far.
Mhm, mhm,
But
mhm.
so I was looking for the majority of it was pretty much just like 2020. Oh no, it was 2021. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm forgetting like
Mhm.
what, or New Year and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So for the majority of 2021, I was looking to get my first house and like or first multifamily to house hack. And I changed my criteria around a couple times because that first initial pre-approval that I got, for like the story I just told a minute ago, was a bit low. And I was like, to get like I could get a duplex like in a market that's pretty close to where, I was living before. And like, yeah, I could do that. Um, or, like I ended up saving up a bit more money and stuff like that. And, tried to get another pre-approval and, I got another 50 grand. I'm like, great, but like it still is a really, really low amount, for kind of what I'm looking for. But I mean, that's normal, you know what I mean? I don't have a whole lot of like cash to my name yet, like and it is what it is. But so basically, um, there was one house in Lowell, Massachusetts. It was a two family that I ended up putting under contract. And it was a kind of a crazy story. So like I was on Facebook one time and just like connecting with it. Actually, it's kind of funny how this like links back with, like networking with people and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like just getting to know, some of like the investors and stuff in Mass, like, really close. And there was this wholesaler actually that I connected with, on Facebook. And, I was just shooting the breeze with them. I'm like, oh, like, hey man, like, would you maybe want to hop on a call and, like just shoot the breeze? I'm just kind of getting into things and um, like I'd love to connect or whatever. Like I'm, in Tewksbury, I'm in the next town over, whatever. And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So like we talked for a bit and stuff like that. I kind of told him, like what I was starting to look for and, like being like much newer into this. And, just the normal conversation, we get off the phone. And he ends up texting me like a couple minutes after that. He's like, hey man, he's like, I, heard what you were talking about. And like I just thought this was really funny. Like this, like pretty much just came right across my desk. And he was trying to wholesale it because this guy was a wholesaler. but the seller wouldn't come down on his price. So like it wasn't really making sense for him like to do, what he wanted to do. So he's like, oh, like, this one doesn't work for us. And like the seller is like, stubborn as all hell. And like he doesn't want to move on the price. And he's like, oh, it's gonna be 350 for a duplex in a particular place in Lowell that I was, a big fan of. And I ended up talking to the seller, and it was actually kind of a nightmare because like it was all off market and everything. So like,
Yeah.
I'm still like starting to like get to know like the process of like, I'm like, dude, I'm like, I'm lucky I just got pre-approved. I'm like,
Yeah.
like I'm so new to things that like I have like no idea what's going on and like just trying to figure this stuff out.
How you learn
And
though. How you learn.
definitely, man, you just got to jump right in sometimes, and shout out to Mr. John Bombachi for like totally, like getting me through this one. And even though, it worked out the way it did, the amount of knowledge I learned from it was insane. I couldn't be more appreciative. But, we ended up going through the inspection and stuff like that. Inspection was great. The house was rented out by the bedroom. And this was something that was pretty interesting that I learned was like I was going into it, like the regular like FHA 3.5% down. And the loan officer and my attorney were kind of, something came up because it was rented out by the bedroom. Like it wasn't just like a traditional, like, there's two doors and cut, top and bottom. Um because it was rented by the bedroom, and like that kind of brings into like a whole different set of circumstances, like depending on how many people are in there and like the way the property is set up. And because there is a certain point where like if you're renting out like your property and stuff by the bedroom, there is a certain line where it's considered a rooming house to like the state of Massachusetts. And like that's something that I knew absolutely nothing about. And I ended up finding out that like, this was kind of like right on the line of being a rooming house, and like the financing for it like would be an absolute nightmare. And like it was a big like growth kind of thing. And
Mhm.
basically what they ended up wanting was, for me to put down another or no, I'm sorry. I totally forgot. So I was going in with 5% down,
Mhm.
conventional with like
Mhm.
a first time home buyer loan in Mass.
Mhm.
And they wanted me to put down another 2%, like because of like this certain issue, and with like the rooms and stuff like that. And it was just really really tough on my budget, because
Mhm.
this was kind of eating up a decent amount of what I was doing. So I ended up walking away from the deal. And it might have been a good decision, it might have been a bad decision, I don't know, but I walked away with a bunch of knowledge, and especially a lot from the inspection alone. um and some time went by, like just looking at houses now and then, and doing walkthroughs and writing in offers, not getting anything. And then towards the middle of the year last year, I there was a three family in Lowell, like traditional triple decker, like right on top of each other. It was on a corner lot. There was like an 8-car driveway. Man,
Mhm.
I absolutely fell in love with this multi, man. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, like something about the corner lots, man. Like I really like that stuff, man. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those things. I
Yeah.
really, really dug it. And like, or actually no, like right before that, because my pre-approval was still low, I ended up learning from somebody that, if you tell like your lender, that you're looking for like a 3 or 4 unit property, then you could potentially get a significantly higher pre-approval, because they're starting to include, a percentage of like the rent or like the
Mhm.
forecasted rent. I'm not 100% positive, how it works, but like a percentage of the rent that's coming in gets added in with your income, if I'm not mistaken. So like you're actually allowed to have a bit more leverage, because like the income from like the tenants and stuff gets added in with your income. So like you're actually able to use, a bit higher of a pre-approval. And after learning that, like that was another one of those things that like, it was just like one conversation one time. And somebody was like, oh, like, why don't you just get a pre-approval for a 3 or a 4? Like it could like make a world of a difference. I'm like, bro. And I did it, and it ended up doubling the size of my pre-approval. So I was like, dude, all right, like we have a lot more money to work with
Yeah,
now.
big
And,
time.
still trying to, like stay grounded and be careful of, like not over leveraging and like taking on way too much debt and like getting in like way the heck over my head. And that brings me to the next property. So there was that three family in Lowell. I absolutely loved it. The building was completely occupied. So I knew like at the very least, like I would have to like try to get somebody out of there. And,
Mm,
for those guys who might not be in Massachusetts, Massachusetts is an extremely like tenant friendly state. So it can be kind of a nightmare, to kind of say the least sometimes like when it comes to getting people out.
mhm,
So I knew at the very least there was that. And then like we're going through the property and like in the inspection and stuff. And literally like in the basement, like there was some really, really crazy structural damage. And I'm talking like the whole building is like technically sagging to one side, and like the joists in the basement were like hanging off where they were supposed to sit by like 2 inches in one spot. And like,
mm,
there was like water like leaking all over the place. And like it's like there was just way too much of a project for, a first time. Well, I'm not saying, for anybody, but for me, it was
yeah,
way too much that I could chew. And it was at a substantially higher price point than I should have been acting. Especially with not being like anywhere close to turnkey and like needing a bunch of work and everything. So I ended up, getting the inspection results from that one, and ended up walking away from that. But what I took away from that experience was that I really, really liked, the three and the four family type of asset. And
mm,
now, I can go into this knowing that, we have a much higher pre-approval that we can play with, if I'm able to get a three or a four. But
mhm,
at the price that I put it under contract for, it was 612,000, and in Lowell. But for me, that was a price point that was way too high, than for the capital that I have and stuff that I should have been playing around at. So I was like, all right. So I really like, the type of asset like the three or the four family.
mm,
I know 600 was, a bit too high for my comfort.
yeah,
Um, like how am I going to get another property? Like how can I get another three or four family, but at a lower
mm,
price point, like on
mhm,
average and stuff. So it
yeah,
caused me to kind of start looking around and like reevaluate my criteria. Like I looked in like Worcester for a bit, like loved Worcester. Um, and then eventually I found Leominster. And like I like looked at Marlborough and Leominster, and like I
yeah,
don't know, just like this property in Leominster, man, there was like four of them that I saw in one day. And like I absolutely hated two of them, like wasn't even gonna bother with an offer. And then there was two of them that like really stuck out. And like I just like really hit it off with the listing agent for some reason for the one that I ended up closing, like just right off the bat. And like it was a really weird situation. And like so it was like raining like that whole weekend. And I think the property came up on like a Friday night. And there was a showing, or like there was two group showings. There was one like the next Saturday and one the next Sunday at like 1 o'clock. So I went to book the showing with the agent, and like booked it for next that Saturday at 1 o'clock. And I go in the back of the house, and there's nobody else there. I'm like, am I in the right place? Like, is this like the right time? Like, did something change? And I look in like the notes for like the showing app, and it's like it said, oh, like the listing agent wants me to meet her in like the back unit. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Um, but yeah, basically like I did, and like I met her and everything. And like she gave me like a walkthrough and stuff like that of like the vacant unit and like some of the other property. And like I absolutely loved it. And like it was a little bit, it's a really weird setup. So
mm,
it's a three family with a three bedroom, a two bedroom, and a three bedroom.
mm,
But in my unit, which is a three bedroom,
mm,
there's basically like if you go, so the kitchen, the bathroom, and the living room are on like the first floor. And then
mm,
once you go up to the second floor, that's where the bedrooms are. But you have to
mm,
walk through all three of the bedrooms like to
mm,
get to the next room. Like they're not like isolated or anything. And then
uh,
at the end of the hall, there's another door that goes up to an attic that was like half finished. Like there was drywall up and everything. Like I've never seen anything like that before. So I was
Wow.
like, dude, like I wonder if this can be like I'll have to like
Mhm.
check with the city and see like maybe we can turn these into bedrooms and like,
Mhm.
fix the other bedrooms and like isolate them. And like that's kind of been my project. And getting through the transaction itself was very challenging because
Mm.
there was the inspection, there was a couple things that stuck out that were a bit pricier that, we
Mhm.
ended up figuring things out. And then they we signed purchase and sale, and then the bank, was doing like like the underwriting or like their calculations or whatever. And apparently I made like a couple grand over like the income limit for that area. Because
Mm.
I was using the same kind of loan that I was the first time, which it's
Yeah.
called the MHP1. And it's
Mm.
like a first time home buyer loan in Massachusetts. And like
Right.
it's either like 3% conventional for I think like a single family and two family, and then
Mhm.
5% conventional for a three family. And I believe they do four family too, with like no PMI. Like whenever I tell people about it, man, like it sounds fake. Like it's like some
Right.
2008 type of stuff. And like, oh, like I'm an attorney. All right, man. Like you look like one. Sounds good. Like give me like $1 million, like
Right.
but I promise it's real. And I was trying to use it. But basically, like one of the things is like, you have to be a first time home buyer. Like you have to have below a certain amount of assets. And then you had to be under like a certain percentage of like the area's income limit. So and it's by like city and stuff. So
Mm.
I was fine when I first got pre-approved with this loan like a while ago, like for this area. But like with work, like my day job and stuff, there was like back pay and stuff that ended up coming in because like certain things were happening with pay. And there was a decent amount of money that like I ended up getting just because like they messed something up from like day one, and like we were supposed to be getting this much like the whole time and whatever. But like that kind of messed up everything for me because now that pushed me over the income limit. So now
Mm.
they're like, oh well, there's like two things we can do. Like you can either have like a really crazy loan and have to put like 60 grand down, and they're like we didn't even bother like
Mhm.
doing that because like we kind of figured like you wouldn't want to do that. I'm like
Yeah.
no, I can't.
Yep.
Like not even close. And the other one was to change it over to FHA. So I'm like all right, like that's fine, you know what I mean. And like the payment went up a bit because like FHA is like a little bit more like things in their terms and stuff and whatever. And basically like they ended up changing that over. Oh, and that was the other thing. It was like right before they changed that, or no, it was yeah, right before they changed that, we had the appraisal done. The
Mm.
appraisal came in $18,000 low. And like we ended up, me and the listing agent went back and forth and like we got it figured out. And like eventually like we settled at what's it called? Like the appraisal value. And
Mhm.
then they found out that thing with the loan and like they had to like switch the loan. But
Wow.
now the thing is with FHA is now you need an FHA appraiser to do
Oh.
one. And like that's when things come up like the lead paint and like
Oh.
like painting the decks and everything
Yeah.
and like
Yep. Yep.
like that type of stuff. And like that's fine, you know what I mean? Like it's a like safety focused like kind of loan, and like they want you to be in like a really like safe building and like not a hazard to like kids or anything. And like I get that. But like I know at very least in this property, like there was like a couple of the windows that I have like like a crack through them. Like it's like it's not much, but it's still like broken, quote unquote.
Mhm.
And we're like, oh great, like once this guy comes out, like he's probably gonna pick up at least on the windows. There was like a walkway that like the rise over run on the stairs is a little messed up. And I'm like, oh, like he's probably gonna, come up on that stuff. And like, now we gotta throw a bunch more money into this. And like I'm already running thin at this point. And like it was the
Mhm.
most like stressful time of my life, man. And I was we were waiting for the appraiser to, come out to the property because that's what everybody thought that, he was supposed to do was actually like rewalk it. And he basically like didn't have to apparently. Like all of a sudden the bank emailed me and they were like, oh, like we have the appraisal report in hand. Like he's not coming out tomorrow. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Like, all right, man.
Yeah,
And
why not?
actually, right. And I was like, all right, like I'm not gonna ask any questions, whatever. And
Yeah.
I forgot a little part in there was when the appraisal came in low, the both of us were trying to like work things out and we rebutted the appraisal because like we didn't really like the comps that
Mhm.
he had and like, it was a little we feel like it could have been done better.
Mhm.
The appraisal came back at the exact same dollar for dollar number, like not a move in either direction. Like everything, like exact copy of the first appraisal again. Like here it is, man. Like, and then we negotiated after that. So technically, this is the third time that this appraiser like has seen my name like on this
Mhm.
property. And I'm like, dude, like this guy probably hates me right now. And I'm like, I feel bad. I'm like, if I ever meet this guy in person, like I want to like buy him a beer or something. Like,
Yeah.
like thanks. You know what I mean? And yeah, so I mean, eventually things ended up working out. We got it closed and got everything done and everything was great. And then, you know, last week I had a couple of things go on and like, everything with like starting to set up systems and like starting to, get like the rent stuff together and like everything's
Mhm.
has been great so far. Start to like slowly put up, stuff and update things, whatever. And basically one thing that happened was I went into my basement not last Sunday night, but the Sunday night before, so like 2 weeks ago. And I ended up finding out that both of my oil tanks that were very old, and I knew that going in, and like, like one of the boilers in the basement was super old, and like the oil fired furnace in my unit was super old. But I was like, all right, because what my plan was going to be was I was calling National Grid and like the city of Leominster because I'm
Mhm.
like, all right, like if possible, like I would love to get rid of the oil. And like I know, like Mass Save is into some of this kind of stuff. Like I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure how, but I gave them a ring because there was like a 1 inch diameter black iron pipe that was coming
Mhm.
through, the basement wall, like from the street. And usually, I mean, like, there's not a lot of black iron pipes that aren't gas lines that come into a property, like most of it's copper or whatever. And like it, nines it over a couple times. I went into this like, metal, it was like a bladder, like it was probably like a regulator kind of thing. And then a pipe came out of that into what looked like a gas shut off. And like obviously it was, turned to the side and it was shut off. And then it was capped off on the bottom. And somebody spray painted it yellow. So I was like, oh, like, I wonder if like maybe my dreams can come true even faster. Like,
Mhm.
like maybe we can use this existing gas line and like, whatever. So I was calling like the city of Leominster, seeing like, hey, like, do you guys like handle something like this? Like if
Mm.
it doesn't work anymore, like do you usually like spray paint it or whatever? Because it's
Yeah.
not in use. And they had me call National Grid because that was, like the gas provider. And they were basically telling me like we're probably not going to be able to use that, but I'll tell you what we can do is the way that I was told that like National Grid is when it comes to running gas lines. That's at least like what the woman told me for like this like Leominster in particular, um was that for the first 100 feet of gas line that's in the street, like run
Mhm.
into your property, like
Mhm.
National Grid will cover that. Like it's completely free, like you don't have to worry about it. But like if you have like a long driveway or something, for each additional foot it was like
Mhm.
$30. I was like, all right, perfect, because my house is pretty close to the street. And
Mhm.
there was she told me, she's like, there's gas in the street, just not at the house. And I'm like, all right. And she's like, I think you would be okay. Like you'd have to look, and see the distance. So, I was asking her, I'm like, oh, like how does it go for meters? Because like the meters, I was told had to be on the outside of the house as well. So I'm like, do I have to pay for meters? Like, I don't know, man, And she was telling me, like, no, the meters are included. So what my original plan was, was a couple months from now, because it's currently January 11th, it's
Mhm.
cold as anything. And
Yeah.
I was gonna wait a couple months, until things warmed up a little bit, have National Grid come out, like fill out the application, hopefully have them lay like a free gas line to my house. Because when I measured from like the middle of the street to my basement, it was like 50 feet at best. I'm like, dude, all right, so we should have this, by a pretty reasonable distance, and then have the 3 meters outside, and then like they'll tap them off into the basement and then use mass save to
Mm,
replace, the super old oil boiler and then
yeah.
the super old oil furnace in my unit, and like get rid of the tanks and like get rid of all that nonsense. Like it's old as hell. Like it's hopefully it doesn't go. Well, about that. So guys, and one thing that I'm gonna say, like before I kind of get into this a little bit, is it's very, very important that you have a pretty good amount of reserves before like you do anything big. Like even like just in life, like you never know like when, like your car could die or something, or like, like all of a sudden you have like medical bills or something that are crazy expensive. Like you never know when like life is gonna hit you in the jaw. Um, and I found that out 2 weeks ago because I was walking into my basement, just to check things out and make sure it was fine, and I noticed that both of my oil tanks were leaking from the bottom. Now, like, like there's nothing you can do about that. Like they're just cast iron, they rot from the inside out. Like they're probably like 40 years old or something, like at least. Like they're old as hell. And I knew that going in. But I started seeing drops like under the tank, and like you could see that it was wet in the basement. And I'm like, all right, like, oh boy, like I don't even know like who to call or anything, like the oil company, like a plumber, like I don't know, man.
Yeah.
And so I looked at mine, and mine was dripping in like 3 places, and it was a decent amount. It wasn't like a bunch, but then I go over to my tenants, and my tenant's tank was dripping pretty good. And I'm like, oh my God, like I gotta get something. So I picked up a couple, like Tupperware containers just to throw under there and
Mhm.
whatever. And like I wasn't even sure who to call, about this. And so basically I ended up calling at first my oil company that just does deliveries. And they just did deliveries. And then I tried calling like a couple more people, and like people just didn't get back to me or whatever. Cause it was like 6 o'clock on a Sunday. And I'm like,
Mm,
so like right off the bat, like the only people that are gonna be answering is like people that are on, like emergency on call, like
mm,
for stuff like that. And I was trying to call like other people, and they were trying to, get their on call guys to call me, and like, a half hour was going by.
mm.
Meanwhile, like I'm sitting under my tenant's tank with like a paper towel, just trying to like keep it in there. And like it was a little bit dramatic. Like I probably didn't have to, but I'm like, you know what? I have nothing better to do, man. Like I might as well try and keep this oil in here. And like duct tape, like nothing was working. Because like the whole bottom of the tank was like moist and dirty and everything, and nothing was sticking to it. So eventually, nobody's answering me. And I looked up, I'm like, who do you call if you're like if your oil tanks are leaking? And one thing that popped up a decent amount, like on Google, was the fire department. Now, basically, like they were saying, like, if even if it's like a wicked, wicked small spill, like it's nothing too crazy, or it's a full out, like your basement has like 200 gallons of heating oil all over the place, like, it's not a bad idea to call these guys. So I'm like, all right, like nobody else is calling me. Like I have no idea, like, who else to try and get, but I need somebody out here like ASAP. So I called the fire department, and I was telling the dispatcher what happened. I'm like, oh, like I just had, I just bought this place like a week ago. Like I just happened to notice that both of my oil tanks were leaking, and like one of them's leaking pretty good. I have like Tupperware containers under them. Like it's not like a lot, but it's enough to be significant. And she's like, all right, no biggie. I'll send a crew out there. And I was like, oh, okay. Now, Kingsley, what I was figuring when she said a crew, man, like I wasn't in distress or anything. Like I just told her, I'm like, this is what's going on. Like, I was thinking, I told her, I'm like, it's contained, like nothing's like a catastrophe or anything.
Yeah.
I figured they'd send out like a, two guys in a fire department truck, like pickup truck or something, right?
Yeah.
No, a whole ass fire engine with a full team of people, and like the lights were going off and everything, comes
No.
out to my house, man. And like, they were telling me, I told them what was going on and everything. I showed them what was going on, and they tried like fixing this leak or whatever on my tenant's tank. And like they had this like, small tub of like a paste kind of thing that, should stick to like dry surfaces, it should stick to wet
Mhm.
surfaces, like it should stick to
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
Well, they tried like stuffing this on there and, to at least stop it temporarily, until I could have somebody else out like the next day. And it wasn't sticking to anything, like the tank at all. And they're like, "Oh, like I'm sorry. Like I wish we could have helped you." And like they tried for a while and like, we're trying a bunch of different things. Like I'm talking like the lieutenant was there and like there was a
Mhm.
bunch of firefighters there. And the I'm pretty sure it was the lieutenant. She was calling just going through her phone and like trying to find contacts of like somebody that can try and help out. She calls one person, oh, he retired like 2 years ago. They call
Wow.
somebody else, oh, like they're like just not available or something. And she
Mhm.
found another company and like she was calling them and it went straight to voicemail. But they're like, oh, like I'll leave a voicemail for them to call me back on my cell phone, so these guys can take off or whatever. And
Mhm.
hopefully they get back to me.
Mhm.
Well, this company did. And they ended up coming out Sunday night and there was like a magnet kind of thing that you can throw on like oil tanks and
Yeah.
it's like a super strong magnet and it has like a gasket around it. So
Mhm.
basically like you like put it right on the leaking spot and like the
Yeah.
gasket seals. So like it, hopefully knock on wood should like temporarily stop it. And it did until like the next day.
Wow.
But like I was telling these guys, when they came by, I'm like, yeah, like I just bought this place. Like, these tanks, like I have to replace them. Like I don't have a choice. Like my dreams of having like, National Grid come in a couple months just went out the window. I'm like these guys need heat like right now. And so I ran out to like Walmart and picked up like a couple space heaters and stuff for them, like just to make sure they were like relatively, as warm as I can get. Cause the fire department told me to shut the oil and stuff off. And yeah, it's that basically like I ended up having to replace, two oil tanks, which was like $5,400. And then I go back to my unit a couple days ago and the motor on like my blower to the furnace, that fried too. So now like, they replaced that. That was like $500. So I was like, all right, that's not bad. But they were like, yeah, I think we should give you a quote to replace this unit because it's like old as anything. So yeah, I mean, guys, basically, really, really long story. I apologize, but
Man.
case in point, like you never know, like especially when you buy a house or like a project or something, like when everything is gonna hit the fan at once, and like you always
Mhm.
want to be prepared for it because like if you don't have reserves and you over leverage yourself, it could really kind of wash the tide out, and
Mhm.
yeah, so it's been interesting so far, lots of growth and learning by force, but it is
Yeah,
what it is, man.
dude, well, I like to say, man, overall, dude, I'm proud as hell, bro. Even just to hear all this, like, I mean, I'm excited when I think about the long run and everything. I mean, I can't wait to just watch this movie right here, man. And
You
I mean,
too, bro. Hell yeah.
yeah, dude, for sure. I mean, this is what it is, man. Like, you're so far ahead of so many people our age. I mean, a lot of older people, man. Just even owning a property, dude. I mean, even to this day, I still don't even own a property. I've just flipped. But like, like I'm trying to learn as much as I can and whatnot. And like, it's about the knowledge, it's about the growth, and it's about the journey, man. That's really what it is. And so like,
Yes.
man, like just man, that's dope. Like man, like I can't wait till I reach that goal of just owning something my own. But that dude, just you should be incredibly proud of yourself, man, and just keep going and keep pushing and get through this one and then start looking for the next one, man. Like
Thank you so much, man. I totally agree with you. It's all about the growth. And same to you too, man. Like you've done so much that like, people like wouldn't even dream of doing, you know what I mean? And I'm so excited to watch your movie, man. We're
yeah,
growing together.
let's do it, man. Let's do it. I already got to start heading out and whatnot. Figure out to be with the family and whatnot. But like, man, like again, man, I genuinely, man, it's like an honor to be on something like this, man. And so, to
It's an
be here,
honor to have you, man. I'm very blessed to have you on.
sure, man, and like, man, like I'll be around, man, and hit me anytime. Dude, if you ever want to do this again, I'm more than happy to and whatnot. But
100%.
I'll be around, man. Like, I ain't going nowhere, man. We got the whole the Kindle team, man. So like, we're doing things, man, and just, keep pushing, man. And I'm here, man. You got all my support, dude, for
Yeah,
anything, man.
man,
Like,
100%. We're doing
anytime.
this together.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it, man. So like
But yeah,
only up from here, man.
of course. Kingsley, last but not least, where on like social media and stuff can you be found?
Yeah, yeah. You follow me on my Instagram at kings.nko. Over there, that's where I'm posting some of my real estate stuff. And then, soon I'll be posting a lot of YouTube stuff and also a bunch of stuff on Instagram too. Like soon, and TikTok, like soon, like once I've got like systems in place here, like dude, I'll be posting a lot of like everything. But right now I'm really focusing on mastering the craft of finding the deal. Once I get good at that consistently, yeah, dude, it'll be exciting. So make sure to follow me there, kings.nko.
Definitely, man. I'll drop everything down below. Thank you so much for coming on here, Kingsley. That was absolutely amazing, bro. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully, you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.